Hey guys, so this is supposed to be a fun video, all in fun. It's going to maybe rile me up a little bit because this is one of my favorite books. As you can tell by the title, I'm going to be reading 1-star reviews of one of my favorite books, see why people didn't like it. I think this just is fun in general, but also it's good for me as a aspiring author and writer of fiction to maybe get some people's criticisms of other books. And I just read Red Rising recently. If you saw that, it was in my January reading list, and I read it and I loved it. I did. I loved it. I think I gave it on Goodreads. I gave it 5 stars, but there is a 4.27 average rating out of 560,000 ratings. All right. There are 8,200 1-star reviews, 8,300 just about. And we're going to read them and have a good old time. Riley says, deleting this from my brain. 205 likes, 9 comments. Okay. Trudy. Oh, my aching gory balls. No, please, I insist. Allow me to put myself out of my misery. Wow, that's dark. Repetitive, info dump, shallow world building, repetitive, show don't tell, horrible characters, repetitive, boring, made me want to hurt myself, made me want to hurt somebody else. And this won an award, ? You suck, but not as much as this book. When good ideas go bad. Maybe I'm just bitter. Am I drunk? I wish I was drunk. What kind of review was that? Wow, this person needs to maybe have some people. They have a lot of followers on here. Good golly. Can we go to your profile and see what books you do like? 1,167 ratings, 3.5 average. Okay, so nothing really makes you happy. Sam Quixote, brain dead, wannabe, here's Red Rising. That's brutal. Pierce Brown, I'm a hack writer, but my copy of The Hunger Games on Mars. I mean, Red Roses, Red Riding Hood, Red Rising, whatever. Here's what I wrote during my shifts at McDonald's. Forget originality. I'm in this for the Benjamins. 4-picture movie deal. Here I come. But it never did get a movie deal, did it? The info dumps I could understand. Info dumps were true. I'll give you that. There was definitely info dumps in Red Rising. Christian imagery, I don't know if I saw any of that. Jailbait, not sure about that. The romance didn't feel crappy to me. But then again, I'm a guy, so we're not allowed to comment on that, right? Dystopian future, what's wrong with that? It's a trope. Why? This is one of the things that I struggle with reviews that people give is when they criticize something that is, they see something in a book and their opinion is that thing sucks, but they play it off as if it's fact and not just their opinion. There are people that love dystopian future and they think that's the best trope out, but he's saying that's a negative thing. Dystopian future, like, you can't criticize a book for something that is subjective. There is no objective right or wrong with certain things in art, right? Also, Mars, the future generic crap. I understand that, like Mars, if it's overdone, but again, you're criticizing something that they choose. I don't necessarily see that. Because in a way you have to make it somewhat realistic so that it draws a reader to feel an attachment. Like if they picked some random Ooga Booga planet from galaxy so far away and it's barely humanized, then I'm not going to be as connected. But if you make it Mars, where there's a possibility of terraforming Mars way out in the future there, and it's very humanized, I feel like there's a little bit more of a draw there and a connection emotionally. Also, copy of The Hunger Games, I would say yes and no. And then are we going to say that about like all those books and movies and things that came out around that time? It just copied The Hunger Games. Was there not anything written before that challenged society and the hierarchy of society? I think there were. I think there was other books. So you can't criticize them for taking inspiration from something and creating their own thing, which also I think the game in Red Rising, the first book, is cooler than the Hunger Games games. Like the fact that you have to unite everyone. Yes, you have to do slaves and stuff, but he finds another way around that, right? I think that is significantly better compared to the Hunger Games. We drop you in a lobby and you all have to kill each other. Does that make sense? That's me just being defensive. DNF at 7%. That's so early. You should not be allowed to review a book if you don't get a certain percentage of the way. Like, unless a book has certain things that I just don't want to read, like if I get to smut, like super detailed smut within the first 7%, then obviously I'm probably not going to read the book. That's me personally. I don't like that. Right? Some of you, if you paid attention to the channel, you know that. But to DNF a book just because you're not into it at 7%, I think is sacrilegious. I think you got to get at least 25% through a book. Trust me, I have no problem DNFing a book. I have no problem DNFing a book. If I don't like it, I'm not going to finish it. But 7% is really early. It has taken me over 5 days to read 25 pages. 25 pages. Okay, no. You should not be allowed to read a book and review it at 25 pages. You should not be able to go on Goodreads. I just elbowed my computer. You should not be able to go on Goodreads and review a book at 25 pages. That's almost as bad as looking at the cover and reviewing a book. Come on. Am I crazy? You know the book with such a high Goodreads rating and so many screaming fangirls, I honestly expect Red Rising to be better. I at least expected it to be good. Instead, I was almost sent to sleep by the tragically slow plot and bland writing. How is the plot slow? I think my biggest criticism of this book was genuinely the writing style. I didn't love the writing style. It was hard for me to read going from certain books to this book. Okay. But also, it seems like a big thing nowadays for a lot of readers is they want a book that has a lot of dialogue and is almost like reading a movie script rather than reading an actual book. Like if J.R.R. Tolkien wrote The Lord of the Rings and released it now, it probably wouldn't be that widely accepted because of his writing style. I genuinely believe that. At least they read the whole book. It shows here by the end of the book. Okay. I really do not get the hype surrounding this book. The plot is nothing special. Red Rising starts out with Darrow's wife, Io, dying, which spurs Darrow into becoming a rebel, going to a school for the obnoxious and privileged Golds. It started out well. I was interested up until Darrow actually got to the school, and then they started wars and battles. While this sort of thing usually keeps me interested, it just made no sense to me whatsoever. It was boring and felt contrived, as if these rich people would let their kids die at the hands of other rich people. Yeah. What do you mean? So I have a problem with this statement. I have a problem with this. And here's why. Not just because I like the book, but because of the logic. The logic is faulty here. Amber, Books of Amber. I appreciate you writing this review. Like it's at least you're not just saying garbage, blow my brains out type of a thing like the other people, but you actually have a well thought out response. But this part, you're logically missing something. You disagree with the way the world is without actually existing in the world. Now, should a book get you there better so that you can at least understand it? Yeah. But I just listened to a podcast yesterday about Fourth Wing and two guys that didn't like it, two girls that did. And one of them was criticizing the way that the world was and the way that the leaders in this fictional world of Fourth Wing handled a situation. And the person defended it by saying, that's how they did it. Like, they have their reasons and that's why they do it. So you're criticizing them for their logic, but it's how they did it. And it isn't actually that crazy that rich people in this hierarchy society of the Golds would do that. And here's why. Because the Golds are all about purification. They're all about being the best of the best of the best of the best. It does not seem that they have a strong family relationship, which is why Mustang betrayed her brother so easily. One, because they have different viewpoints. That's why the head gold guy, I can't think of the title of his name, at the very end wants to bring Darrow in because he knows his son's a loser and he doesn't care about his daughter necessarily. He just wants to hold power. All they care about is power, and if their kids are weak and annoying, then who cares? Like, the Golds are all about progressive evolution. Did you get that? Survival of the fittest is what has been pounded in them to become the greatest of the hierarchy. So it makes sense that they would send their kids into a place where they could die. Because if their kid is weak, then they wouldn't even want their kid alive if they were weak. Which I think the House of Mars dude, oh my word, basically Haymitch. He was eerily like a dupe of Haymitch. But the the proctor that they stole the hover boots from. I can't think of his name right now. It's driving me insane. Anyway, you know who I'm talking about. He's the one that wasn't a terrible guy. He was head of Darrow's house, right? He was the proctor over them. He basically like thought that about his son. He knew his son was going in there to die, but because he was weak, but then he ended up winning. So I started skim reading after 200 pages because Red Rising completely failed to hold my attention. At the same time, I wanted to go to the end because maybe I was being too judgmental. The book was going to get better. Everyone had told me that it was crazy and mind-blowing, so I had to go on, right? Wrong. I shouldn't have bothered. Skim reading this book was hard. There's certain books that I've learned so far that you can skim read and you don't miss much. I think Red Rising, and that was one of my criticisms of the way it was written, is it seems like you can't skim read. Like every sentence holds a detail that you have to pay attention to, it feels like, which makes it really hard to read, in my opinion. Darrow's an awful character. I don't know about that. In the end, the excessive rape, it was so unnecessary. I agree with that. The excessive essay in the book was a little bit much. But I think they did that to show that that's what these entitled rich golds do. Like, that's how they view life. And when they don't have their pinks to service them, they will just take what they want. I do agree that it was excessive. I don't like that. I'm glad that there wasn't details about it. But overall, I think it was a bit excessive. I would agree with that. The casual sexism and homophobia that runs through the book, even the female characters express derision by suggesting that things are done like a girl. No, just no. Okay, this review automatically is dumb. I didn't see that in the book at all. Like, who cares? Their society's different. Their society's different. They have a hierarchy and judge things. Just because a book has a culture in it that isn't aligning with your beliefs doesn't mean it sucks. It means that that culture is different. I'm not saying it's right or wrong. I'm just saying to criticize something because it disagrees with your opinion doesn't mean it's 1 star. It just means it's different. There's plenty of books that I'll end up reading that I'm like, you know what? I don't like that. I don't like the direction this went. I don't like the character and what they did with them, but it doesn't mean the book itself is bad. I didn't connect or empathize with anything in Red Rising. A lot of events happened that should have had my heart beating faster, my energy level. What actually happened is I kept finding excuses not to pick the book back up, like watching shows. I recorded on my DVR and hadn't watched in weeks. I actually forgot how old the episodes were until a commercial played a heavy snowfall warning, which made me laugh since May is less than a week away. I was doing household chores in my free time to avoid reading this book. I couldn't get into the story thanks to the info dumps. Info dumps, 100%. I could understand that. I could understand why that's annoying, but I think there was enough in between that it was okay. You know? I don't know. Awkward use of first-person point of view. Maybe that's why it was so tough to read. Awkward use of first point of view, maybe. Uninteresting characters. I disagree. I think some of the characters are very interesting. Telling rather than showing. A lot of people have that criticism. It makes me really interested about my book. I want to make sure that I'm not just telling, but that I'm showing. It's safe to say Red Rising, clearly not for me. This was probably the best review. A lot of unnecessary information, which is interesting. This guy doesn't like the info dumps, but he gives a bunch of crappy info that doesn't really have anything to do with it. You could have just said, I was finding every excuse not to read the book. Instead, you got to explain to us about your stupid DVR and the snowfall and the May and chores. But the best review, the most understandable 1-star review, I would say. Logically sound. All of these things I think are fair points. That's going to do it, guys, for this reading 1-star reviews of one of my favorite books. Oh, I got a little defensive, but also I think just reviews in general, book reviews, movie reviews, any reviews, it's super frustrating watching people treat their opinion as if it's the biggest fact on planet Earth. But is what it is. That's how society works and culture works. I just wish people were a little bit more understanding that their opinion is subjective and there's not an objective right or wrong entirely when it comes to art. there's objective in the world, but then in art, there's not always an objective right or wrong. Beauty's in the eye of the beholder sometimes, and that's what it is. So hopefully you enjoyed. If you got book recommendations, as always, I just want to remind you, put them in the comments down below. I'm reading a lot right now. I'm reading currently The Blade itself, and we're going from there. We'll catch y'all later. Thanks for watching.